Almost all countries in the world are in debt. America's debt has exceeded $38 trillion. The total debt of the European Union has reached 14 trillion euros. Japan's is approaching 9 trillion. Even Saudi Arabia, whose underground resources are overflowing with oil, or industrial giants like Germany and China, have huge debts. But here a surprising question arises: if everyone is in debt, who is this debt owed to? We're talking about a situation where money, power, and history are intertwined. Nothing is actually as clear as it looks from the outside. Debt is not just an obstacle, it is almost the supporting pillar of today's world. Great wars, massive crises, economic collapses, all stand on top of this unknown debt system. And when we trace this debt a little bit, we face an interesting reality. The world is actually not indebted to anyone. It is indebted to itself. But, of course, not everyone benefits from this debt system in the same way. To understand how we reach the current huge debt level, we need to travel a bit back in time. Don't think of credit cards or online payments. Let's go much further back to the 1600s. In 1694, France and England were at war and had run out of gold. As a last resort, the king decided to borrow money from merchants. In return, he promised that he would pay them interest from future taxes. To manage this system, the Bank of England was established. This moment marks the beginning of a major shift in history. Governments could now spend money that didn't exist. Lenders received a reliable promise from the government. In other words, the first foundation of today's government bonds was laid. Other countries quickly copied this unique model. National debt was no longer considered a weakness. It became a sign of trust. A state that could borrow was considered a strong state. After all these years, when we come to today, debt has become the most exported product in the world. All countries are in debt, and all countries lend money. All people are both debtors and creditors. So who is on the other side of this giant system? Let's look at the US, for example. Half of America's $38 trillion in debt is in the pockets of its citizens. Banks, pension funds, investment funds, insurance companies, even the US Federal Reserve is creditor of this debt. The rest is held by foreigners. The biggest creditor is Japan. Then comes China. But China's share in the total debt is only around 2%. So essentially, the US is mostly indebted to itself. The Treasury issues bonds. Banks buy them. The Fed sometimes buys these bonds back, creates new money. Americans pay the interest on these bonds through taxes, and the money returns to pension funds. The cycle continues this way. This cycle is not unique to the US. It applies to the entire planet. Everyone lends to everyone. Japan lends to the US to Europe, Europe to developing countries. And they reinvest their foreign reserves into the bonds of developed countries and corporations. So everyone is part of this debt chain. Everyone is both a debtor and a creditor. There is one true control point in this system: the markets. Not billions, but trillions of dollars are directed by funds, central banks, and giant investment companies. They determine which countries will borrow cheaply and which will struggle. When investor confidence is lost, currencies collapse, governments change, economies fall apart. It wouldn't be wrong to say that while democracy decides who gets elected, the markets decide who doesn't collapse. Central banks are the main actors in this plan. Debt is not only managed, it is produced. When a central bank buys bonds, it creates money that didn't exist before. Every piece of paper money or digital money in our wallets represents an invisible debt. There is no such thing as money without debt. This system has survived for centuries thanks to trust. As long as people believe that countries will at least pay the interest, the system continues. But what if trust disappears? It happened in Greece. It happened in Argentina. It happened in Sri Lanka. When debts become unpayable, the system collapses instantly. Interest rates shoot up, investors flee, and governments pay an enormous price. But what's strange is that once the crisis passes, the system returns to its old form. Past debts are restructured, new ones come in, and the wheel keeps turning. Because in today's world, debt is not meant to be paid off. It exists so countries can stay afloat. States have no intention of being debt-free. This is not a secret, it's official policy. Debt is constantly renewed. Interest is the driving force of the system. Government bonds are considered the safest asset in the world, so investors don't even want the principal paid back. What matters to them is for the cycle to never stop. Because these bonds are the main guarantee of banks, the backbone of pension funds, and the tool central banks use instead of money. Because of this, paying off all debt would practically collapse the economy. The safest pillar of the markets would vanish. In summary, debt is the lifeblood of today's economy. What matters is not eliminating debt, but preserving trust. However, this system does not reflect fairness to everyone equally. Interest income flows upward while the burden falls on workers and taxpayers. That's why inequality and debt usually grow together. In the end, debt is not about who is good or bad. We are all part of this giant system. Debt is a balance element in today's world. But if one day this balance breaks, the system we are used to may be turned upside down. If you learned something new in this video, don't forget to like it. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this and be sure to share your thoughts with me in the comments.